Alright.
So what's lap time we supposed to get on this track?
Well, the fastest. You
Yeah,
always want to get the fastest.
Same as last week.
Lower it is the faster. That's the pro tip of the day. On default weather, I think so far Philippe did 49.6. I've only done a 49.8. And that's also on default weather and 35% track usage. I don't know if it's 35% on this session. I just didn't check because last week at Okayama I was at 0% the track usage. Anyways, for turn one, I'm braking about 10 to 15 meters after the 50 marker, and I'm also having about half of the car, maybe not half of the car, but yeah, 0% track usage. So for turn one, braking at around this point, so 10 to 15 meters after the 50 marker on the wall. And I'm having my right tires on beyond the white line, so over that extra bit of pavement that's painted yellow and green. Those are the colors. And through turn one, it's pretty important to turn in a little bit later than you expect, and also slow the car down a little more than you expect. And you want to be aiming to get down all the way up on top of that curb, right by the point where the bit of green paint on the outside merges with the curb itself. So right at the end of that green paint, that's where you want to mount the curb completely. And by this point as well, you should be able to get completely back on the throttle, and you shouldn't have to lift off the throttle. And this is very important. You shouldn't be lifting off the throttle from this point till when you get off the throttle to brake for the left-hander at the end of the straight. So from this point onwards, you really don't want to have to lift off the throttle. So you just want to time your throttle perfectly enough so that you don't have to do that.
Sorry, what gear are you in?
I'm second gear. So rev fifth gear, drop down 3 gears down into second. Yeah, so by this point, it should be completely on the throttle. So really, I think the most common mistake through here is trying to go in too fast and carry too much speed through turn one. So even though you lose a tiny bit of speed going through turn one and a little bit of time, you'll more than make up for it by being early on the throttle and carrying that speed the whole way through turn two, turn three, and down the back straight. So really, probably go slower than you think through there. It should feel pretty slow. And just also make sure you turn in a little bit later than you expect, just so that you're able to get the car straighter and earlier on the throttle. And through turn two, obviously still full throttle, you don't want to have to lift through here. You can cut the corner quite a bit. You can get on the grass a fair bit without getting an off track. You obviously shouldn't aim to do this, but if you got on the throttle decently early on a fast lap, and you feel like you might run out of room on exit, you can cut it and not get an off track, and you'll be fine. So at turn one, you want to time your throttle so that you get on the throttle early enough that the car naturally wants to drift as wide as to have to use this outside curb, but not early enough that you have to lift off the throttle going through turn two. So you just gotta find that balance. And through here, through turn three, you just want to hug the inside for pretty far. You're only drifting wider as the actual curbing starts to get tighter, very late into the corner. And just keeping it that tiny bit tighter will help you cover less distance and make a bit of time that way. So by the end of the back straight, you should be in fifth gear, and coming up to turn four, I'm braking about 5 meters, 5-ish meters after the grass starts on the right side. So you get that block of extra pavement on the right side. And right at the end of that, I probably go about 5 meters past that. And then hit the brakes at around here-ish. So I hit the brakes in 5th gear, drop down 3 gears down into 2nd. You can take this corner, a couple of people do drive this corner in 3rd gear. And if you're used to it, you can totally do it and be just as quick. But I just find it's a little bit easier to use 2nd because obviously the car turns a lot better, and on exit the car will accelerate better as well, just because it's in the lower gear. It's just a little bit easier. You can be pretty fast using either gear. And through here, I think through this corner, it's very so unlike turn 1 where it's really important to really slow the car down and think about how early you can get on the throttle. I think through turn 4, think more about how much speed you can carry through the corner itself and not have to slow down too much. So really try to maintain your minimum apex speed as high as you can. And again, get on throttle early enough so that the car naturally needs to use all of this curbing on the right side. As long as you don't go over the AstroTurf, you don't get an off track. Then the rest of the way, just keep it as tight as you can through here. Alright, and now through turns, I think it's turns 5 and 6. It's sort of like a double apex long right-hander, but I think they could call it turn 5 and 6. But anyways, I'm braking very, very gently and fairly early, a little bit earlier than you probably expect for this corner. So at around there's a Marshall's booth on the left side of the track, and I'm probably going past it by about 5 meters. So at around this point is where I typically start to brake and turn in simultaneously. But it's very important to be very gentle with both your steering input and your brakes as you turn in here, because it's very easy to get the rear to snap into oversteer. Just be easy and gentle on both the steering and the brakes. And once you've turned in, by around this point, you should be able to shift down from 4th into 3rd, and that shouldn't upset the car too much. You'll find that if you downshift earlier than this, the car will be more likely to snap. So really keep it nice and stable through here. Try to minimize the sliding, and really do aim to just kiss that inside curve a little bit. And your line through the rest of the corner should be pretty tight. So as you'll find, your car shouldn't be much more than a car's width away from the edge of the track on the right side. So around this point is as far as you really want the car to be. And then for exit, because you're on this tighter line, you have to be a little bit patient on the throttle. It's sort of hard here to gauge where you can get back on the throttle, simply because because of the geography, you can't really see the exit of the corner. So you sort of have to drive it over and over again until you get a feel for when you can safely get back on the throttle and not run out of room on exit. You'll find that point as soon as you can get back on the throttle, fully use this inside curve, and then also be forced to use all of the curbing on the outside as well. So go about this far. Again, as long as you don't use the actual bit of a green painted surface, you won't get an off track. And just using this much room not only will help you go a little bit faster through the last turn 6, it'll also help you a little bit on your line into turn 7. What I like to do for turn 7 is instead of braking with the car parallel to the edge of the track before turning in, I aim the car in just a tiny bit, so at around this angle, just to get, if you want to see it, you can see it as a head start on the actual turning. So just aim it into the corner just a tiny bit at around this angle, and then really start easing off the brakes and turning in. And through here, it's very, very important to cut as much of the corner as you can. You'll find you can use the whole curb and even the grass screen on the inside. So this far is...
Which gear?
Sorry?
Which gear?
Yeah, for here I do go down into first gear. Yeah, so really use as much of the inside curb as you can. I think in the short run between that last corner, turn 7 and turn 8, I think I do go up into second, and I'm in second through here. Coming out of the last corner, it's important to not be too greedy on the throttle, just so that, let me go back a little bit, just so that you don't end up right on the inside for the next corner. You sort of want to be about a car's width away from the inside of the corner, just setting up for turn 8, sort of around this point. So really just be a little bit more patient than you would usually coming out of the last corner, just so that you're around this position coming into turn 8. And through here, I'll keep it in second gear, I believe, and just brush the brakes just a tiny bit as I'm turning in. And unlike the last corner, here you really don't want to use all of the curb and cut as much as you can. Through here, probably as long as you have one wheel on the curb, you'll be fine. But you don't really want to go further than half the car over the curb. That would probably be too much, just because you'll lose a bit of grip the further up you are on the curb. So about this far is as much as you want to use. Exit again, aim to have to use all the curbing on the outside, and then very slowly sort of get the car in a diagonal, aiming to get the car back to the outside and parallel to the edge of the track before braking for the next corner. Just as long as you don't have the car very, very wide and set up way before the corner, you should be fine. Simply because if you set up the car early, which is what a lot of people tend to do, you'll just cover way too much distance and lose a bit of time that way. So simply coming out of the last corner, just drive it a diagonal just to get the car right at the edge of the track. Around this point. Through here, it's sort of hard. There really aren't many references, and you should never use shadows as references. But here, I think it's the only thing you've got. Simply because if the time of day changes, which for race sessions it shouldn't, but if it does change, the shadows will obviously change as well. So your references will be different. So generally, try to not use shadows as references, but here it's really the only thing you've got. But what I usually do is get the car parallel to the edge of the track and brake 1 or 2 meters past the end of the tree's shadow. And through here, you do want to keep the car parallel to the edge of the track as you're braking. I start easing off. And through here, it's important to not use all of the curb and cut as much as you can. Simply because I don't know if you can see it, but right at the curb sort of slopes up and then it plateaus at the very top and it gets flat. And if you start using too much of that flat bit, the car actually starts dragging and bottoming out on the curb itself. So as long as you don't use too much, and that doesn't happen, you'll be fine. Probably go as far as to only get about a wheel on the actual flat part of the curb, If you go just over that, you'll start dragging the bottom of the car, and not only will you lose speed, but the car will also turn less. And on exit, you want to just kiss this outside curb, as long as you don't use all of it, because if you do use all of it, you'll also probably have to use the grasscrete at the end of it, which will give you an off track. So really just try to kiss it and come back for this long left-hander. Come back at about halfway down the track just to set up for the long left-hander. Through the actual left-hander, keep it as tight as you can. Again, through here, there's again that bit of a flat curbing after the actual sloped curbing. So again, try to avoid that, just so that the car doesn't bottom out and scrub speed that way. Then finally, for the final corner, well, the final actual corner, what I'm using as a braking reference is that blotch of grass sticking through the grasscrete right in front of me. And through here, it's also important to get all four wheels on the actual grasscrete itself, instead of maybe having one wheel on the pavement and one on the grasscrete. Try to get the whole car on the grasscrete. Brake just after this blotch of grass sticking out of the grasscrete in front of me. So around this point, be hitting the brakes, shifting down into second, still with the whole car on the grasscrete. And by around this point, I'd be thinking about turning in. I usually don't use a references for turning in. You'll find it's a lot easier and a lot more consistent, a lot more versatile to simply look at the apex before turning in, and then that'll naturally let you know when you have to turn in. But anyways, at around this point is where I'd begin to start turning in. And through here again, you wanna, similar to turn one, don't worry too much about the speed you're carrying through the corner itself, but instead think more about how early you can get back on the throttle, which through here would, on a fast lap, probably be about this point. So just before you start mounting the curb, you should be able to get completely back on the throttle. Through here, you want to use all of the curbing as long as you don't touch the grass on the inside. And then tracking out here, you can use the actual curbing, but if you have to use the grasscrete on the outside, you've probably got on the throttle a little bit too early, and you'll lose a bit of time just because you're covering a bit too much distance. So just time the throttle so that you only have to use the actual painted part of the curbing. And then the rest of the way down the straight, simply keep it as tight as you can most of the way, just to minimize the distance you're traveling.
I'd just like to say thank you again to Johnny for taking the time to give us a walkthrough. If you would like more help from Johnny, he also does private coaching sessions. You can find his contact information down below in the description if you're interested. Johnny was kind enough to share his replay of his time trials with us again this week, so we're going to go to that. Enjoy.
Cool. And for those of you who joined late, I'll mention it one last time. Johnny does give private lessons, so if you want some of that from him, hit him up in iRacing. And at the same time, if you want to buy him a beer, which means send him a few credits, it's always appreciated on his side. He does a lot of work for these.